Okay, so yesterday we talked about properties, and we mentioned the distributive property yesterday, and we spent a little time with it, but I want to spend more time with it today because this is the main one that you were tested on in sixth grade. The other ones, whether you do or not, you should have some understanding of it from elementary school, but the distributive property might be brand new for you. And we talked about it. Remember I mentioned how FedEx and Amazon, places like that, are called distributors, okay? They distribute your mail to your house. And how they can't, if they have a package for your house and your neighbor's house, they can't just skip over your neighbor's house. They have to distribute the items to everybody that needs it, okay? And the reason I'm saying that is because distributive property talks about a number being on the outside of the parentheses, and it has to go to every single number that's on the inside of the parentheses. Not just the first one, not just the last one, but every single number that's inside those parentheses. That number on the outside has to go to it. And by go to it, I mean you're multiplying. Because remember, if you have a number beside a parentheses, it means that you're multiplying. A lot of people, they wonder why you have to do distributive property because sometimes you could just do order of operations and still solve it, which is true, and you'll get the same answer. But sometimes doing order of operations is not an option because of how it looks inside the parentheses. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. But let's look at some examples. Okay, so we'll start off with one that, like what I just said, was you could use order of operations to solve it. But for today, we're going to practice using the distributive property so that you'll understand what to do. So if I give you 6 and then 7y plus 2, right? This actually isn't one that you could do order of operations. I thought about it after I read it, so sorry, we'll do that for the next one. But here's the distributive property. Whatever's on the outside has to be multiplied by the things that are on the inside, okay? This is not an order of operations question because, order of operations, the first letter stands for parentheses. There's nothing I can do inside the parentheses. I can't combine 7y plus 2. I can't combine those together to get 9y. That's not how it works. We're going to learn about that later. But just trust me, you can't do anything in here. So that's why we're going to rely on the distributive property. So I draw these arrows to help you remember that you have to go to every single number that's inside those parentheses. So we say when a number's outside parentheses, all it means is that you're doing is multiplying. So if I do 6 times 7y plus, I've done this one, now I need to move to this one, 6 times 2. And now I can just solve this, okay? Even if you're not comfortable with working with letters, remember in math we call them variables, this is not a difficult thing to solve. You're just doing regular multiplication. So what is 6 times 7? Well, 6 times 7 is 42, and then just bring the y along with it. You can't leave the y off. If you leave the y off, it would be marked wrong. So make sure you bring the variable with it. Now I go on to the next one. 6 times 2 is 12, and as strange as it looks, that is your final answer. Okay? A lot of people don't like distributive property because you get answers like this. In math, we typically think of answers being like one number, but with distributive property, this is the answer. Okay, so don't let that confuse you. Let's look at another one, and this one will be one you could solve with order of operations. I'm not going to confuse you. So let's say you have 5 parentheses 4 plus 6. Okay, so you're doing order of operations, you could easily solve this. You do 4 plus 6 and get 10, and then you would do 10 times 5 to get 50. Quick and simple, easy way to do it with order of operations. But like I said, we're practicing distributive property, so we're going to do it like this. We're going to do 4 times 5, and then 5 times 6, okay? So let's write out what we're doing. First thing we need to do is 5 times 4 plus, I'm getting that plus sign because I'm just carrying over from right here. Then I do this one, 5 times 6, and now I can solve it. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 5 times 6 is 30. If I add those together, I get 50. Remember when we did it the order of operations way, we still got 50 as well. So either way you do it, you get the same answer. But I want you to practice with distributive property, so I want you to do it the distributive property way. And I know that some people don't want to because it takes extra time and it's annoying, but it's really helpful to draw these arrows. That way you don't forget that you have to do both numbers or every number that's inside those parentheses. All right, let's try another one. Let's say 3 times 7w minus 4. All right, whatever's on the outside has to go to what's on the inside. All right, the only thing different here is now it's a minus sign instead of an addition sign. So 3 times 7w minus 3 times 4. 3 times 7w is 21w minus 3 times 4 is 12. All right, and once again, remember, that's your final answer. Okay. What if you have one that looks like this? H 2y plus 5x minus 6. Remember, it doesn't matter how many numbers, letters, variables you have inside those parentheses, you have to do everything in there. So this, and this, and this one, all three. Okay, so let's just take them one at a time. So first is 8 times 2y plus, I've done this one, now I'm going to this one, 8 times 5x. Finish this one, now I gotta go to this one. Now it's a minus sign this time, so pay attention to that. 8 times 6. All right, now we just need to do each part. 8 times 2y, 16y, plus 8 times 5x is 40x, and then minus 8 times 6 is 48. And that's your final answer. Okay, so if it's got 3 numbers in there, you don't do anything different. You still just take them one at a time. All right, now sometimes you might have one that looks like this. 10y plus 3/5. All right, you don't panic. You do the exact same thing. This 10 still has to go to the y, and the 10 still has to go to the 3/5. Don't panic thinking it's something different just because it's a fraction. You don't do anything different just because it's a fraction. Take it one step at a time. So 10 times y plus 10 times 3/5. Okay? So 10 times y is just 10y. Okay? Now I need to do 10 times 3/5. Now don't panic. We know how to multiply fractions. We've done notes on this before. So let's just write it out real quick. So if I'm doing 10 times 3/5. Okay, remember my rule for multiplying fractions is just going straight across. You remember, you're not doing keep, change, flip. That's when you're dividing. All right, so we're multiplying, we go straight across. The problem right now is that this right here is not written as a fraction. It's written as a whole number. So we need to change that first. I need to change it so that it's a fraction. So it's going to be 10 over 1 times 3/5. All right, remember, you just go straight across. So 10 times 3 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5. Well, how many times does 5 go into 30? 5 goes into 30 6 times. So all I'm going to do is come up here and I'm just going to put 6 right there, and that's my final answer. Okay? So it's not doing anything different just because it's a fraction. All right? One more. Let me come down here so I can make room. All right, and you don't have many of these, so don't panic if you don't like them. Most of the time, there are going to be whole numbers, but you could have one that looks like this. Okay, you could have one like that. Don't panic. You're going to do the exact same thing. Even if it's a decimal out here, you still have to multiply by what's on the inside. Okay, so you're gonna end up doing 0.35 times 3x minus 0.35 times 2.25. All right, for the sake of time, I'm not cheating, I promise, but I am gonna use a calculator just so that we don't run out of time to do this. But remember, multiplying decimals, we know how to do that. Remember, put the one that's got the most digits on top. And then remember, you count your places behind the decimal to know where your decimal goes. You do not have to line up your decimals when you're multiplying decimals. I do recommend being careful because obviously you've got the decimal point, but you've also got your time sign, so don't get your dots confused. But when I do 0.35 times 3, I get 1.05x, because remember, you can't leave off the variable. You have to bring the variable with it, minus, now I'm going to do this part, 0.35 times 2.25, and I get this ugly decimal that ends up being in your final answer. So once again, it may not look pretty, but that is your final answer, okay? So we're going to practice with this for a couple days, and hopefully you'll get the hang of it and be good to go.